Hey everyone. Tonight we're going to peel back the heavy, damp wool of history to a time before paper, before contracts, and before the comforting, sterile silence of a modern courtroom. Imagine a world where your reputation is your credit score, your bank account, and your life insurance all rolled into one, and where justice isn't found in a book, but shouted across a windy field surrounded by hundreds of armed, opinionated, and very likely intoxicated neighbors. You find yourself standing in the middle of it all, your heart pounding a rhythm against your ribs like a blacksmith's hammer. This is a place where a single poorly chosen word could get you killed. Legally, you probably wouldn't survive this, not because of the axes, but because of the complete lack of an "I'd like to speak to the manager" option. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always fascinating to see where these stories land. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The day begins just like any other, which is to say, it's cold. A damp, persistent chill seeps through the thick weave of your wool tunic, a reminder from the gods that comfort is a temporary and conditional gift. You're leaning against a fence post, whittling a piece of birchwood into something that might one day become a spoon, or perhaps just a slightly more aerodynamic piece of firewood. The sky is the color of old pewter, and the air smells of wet earth, peat smoke, and the uniquely pungent aroma of your neighbor's prize-winning goats. Life is, for the most part, stable. You have a solid longhouse, a handful of sheep whose lineage you can trace back further than your own, and a family that views you with a respectable, if not always enthusiastic, degree of affection. Your neighbor Bjorn stomps into your view. His beard, a magnificent but perpetually untidy affair that looks like a badger who lost a fight with a honeypot, is bristling with indignation. This isn't unusual. Bjorn's natural state is a low, simmering rage, perpetually in search of a reason to boil over. Today the reason is a single ewe, one of yours that has apparently been discovered sampling the tender shoots in his private vegetable patch. An international incident, by the standards of your small, isolated farming community. You sigh, placing your half-finished spoon into a pocket. You've had this conversation before. You'll apologize, offer him a bit of cheese or a length of rope to mend the fence he can't be bothered to fix himself, and the matter will be settled. That is the way of things. A little social grease to keep the gears of community from grinding to a halt. But today feels different. There are others around. A few farmhands mending a plow, a cousin of yours fixing a harness, and even Bjorn's own wife watching from the doorway of their longhouse. There's an audience, and an audience makes a man like Bjorn bold. "Your beast was in my garden again," he growls, foregoing any greeting. He points a thick, dirt-caked finger at you. A man who cannot control his flock is no man at all. He's a child playing at being a farmer. You feel a familiar prickle of annoyance. You open your mouth to deliver the usual placating response, but he cuts you off. He takes a step closer, lowering his voice into a conspiratorial boom that carries across the yard. Or perhaps you are simply too timid to discipline them, just as you were too timid to join the last raid, hiding here with the women and the sheep while real men were out winning silver and honor. And there it is. The air goes still. The hammering stops. Even the goats seem to pause their incessant chewing. This is no longer about a sheep. This has escalated from a petty grievance to a full-blown attack on your honor. He has publicly accused you of being arger or rogger, terms that encompass cowardice, unmanliness, a whole spectrum of shameful, effeminate qualities. In your world, this is the nuclear option. It's a legal concept known as NID. It is not just an insult. It is a profound and deliberate act of character assassination, a poisoned dart aimed at the very core of your identity and social standing. Historians still argue whether these verbal spars were spontaneous outbursts or calculated political maneuvers designed to test an opponent's resolve before a more serious conflict. But right now, you don't care about the academic debate. You only feel the heat rising in your face. This is the Viking equivalent of a career-ending post going viral on social media. Except there's no delete button, and everyone you know and will ever know is watching it happen in real time. Your reputation, the invisible currency that allows you to trade, to ask for help during a hard winter, to marry your children into good families, is being shredded before your eyes. Every man in earshot is now evaluating you. Do they see a patient, reasonable man being provoked? Or do they see the weakling Bjorn is painting you as? Your response in the next few moments will determine everything. You could draw the knife from your belt. Violence is always an option, a quick and decisive way to answer an insult. But that path is messy, bloody, and could easily end with your own death or being branded a killer, creating a blood feud that would haunt your family for generations. No, there is another way. A path that is just as dangerous, but one that operates within the complex, unwritten rules of your society. You won't meet his challenge with a blade. You'll meet it with the law. Your fists remain unclenched at your sides, a small but significant victory of will over instinct. You give Bjorn one long, level look, a look that you hope conveys cold fury, rather than the trembling uncertainty that actually taking root in your stomach. You turn without another word and walk back toward the smoky warmth of your longhouse. Every step feels deliberate, heavy. You can feel the eyes of your neighbors on your back, their silent judgment more piercing than the wind. They are weighing the insult, weighing your non-response, and placing their bets on what comes next. You don't slam the heavy wooden door behind you. You close it with a quiet, ominous thud. The sudden dimness of the interior is a relief, the familiar smell of wood smoke, drying herbs, and sleeping dogs a balm to your frayed nerves. Inside, the normal rhythms of the household have paused. Your wife, Runa, is standing by the central fire pit, her hands still in a lump of dough, her knuckles white. Your older brother Eric, who was supposed to be heading out to check the fishing nets, is sitting on a bench, sharpening a small axe with slow, deliberate strokes. Even your uncle, Gunnar, a man whose age has granted him the privilege of napping at any and all hours, is wide awake, his sharp blue eyes fixed on you. He's seen this scene play out 100 times over his long life. The family council has convened without a single word being spoken. He called you Arger, Eric says, not looking up from his whetstone. The rhythmic schlick of stone on steel is the only sound. In front of everyone, you should have split his skull right there and started a blood feud that would see our children killing his children over a stray sheep, Runa counters, her voice tight but controlled. She finally punches the dough with a viciousness that is clearly meant for Bjorn. We don't have the men or the silver for a war with his clan. They have powerful cousins just over the fjord. She's right, of course. This isn't just you versus Bjorn. It's your household versus his household. Your kin against his kin. It's a calculation of strength, wealth, and influence. It's the grim mathematics of survival. You sit down heavily on a stool, the adrenaline beginning to fade, leaving a cold, heavy dread in its place. You are not a chieftain or a great warrior. You are a farmer, a carl, a free man whose wealth is measured in livestock and well-maintained fences. Pursuing any kind of justice requires a careful audit of your social capital. If we do nothing, you say, looking into the glowing embers of the fire, he will take it as weakness. The sheep in his garden today will be our fields tomorrow. He will push and push until we have nothing left to give. Uncle Gunnar finally speaks, his voice a gravelly rumble. The boy is right. An insult like that, left unanswered, is an invitation to be plundered. It festers, like an untended wound. He leans forward, his elbows on his knees. Violence is one path, a short and bloody one. The law is another, longer, more treacherous, but if you win completely. You take his silver and his standing. This is the heart of the matter. You must navigate the intricate web of your social connections. You mentally tick through a list of your allies. There's your cousin Kettle, a good fighter but famously hot-headed. There's the family you married into, Runa's kin, who are prosperous but live half a day's journey away. Would they see this as a worthy cause to lend their support, to stand with you at the local assembly, the Thing? Their presence alone would lend weight to your claim. A man standing with a dozen powerful relatives behind him is listened to more carefully than a man who stands alone. This is the very essence of power in your world. A single person is just a twig, easily snapped. A family, a clan, is a bundle of twigs, strong and resilient. While you talk, your two young children are playing Hnefatafl in the corner, moving their wooden pieces across the carved board. One is the attacker trying to capture the king. The other is the defender, forming a shield wall to protect him. You watch them for a moment, a perfect miniature reflection of the strategic dance you're now forced into. It's not about grand gestures, it's about positioning, about anticipating your opponent's moves, about sacrificing a small piece to save a larger one. It's a joke in a way. Your entire future is being decided in a conversation that is only slightly more complex than your son's board game. Archaeologists and historians debate the exact level of privacy within a longhouse, questioning whether such sensitive discussions could truly be held away from prying ears in what was often a large communal living space. But in this moment, the world has shrunk to the circle of firelight and the trusted faces within it. The rest of the hall with its sleeping platforms and stored winter provisions fades into shadow. "We go to the Thing," Runa says, her decision made. She wipes the flour from her hands. "We do it the proper way. We summon him legally. We will need witnesses. We will need support. And," she adds, giving your brother a pointed look, "we will need everyone to keep their axes in their belts." Eric grunts, a sound of reluctant agreement. Uncle Gunnar nods slowly, a flicker of approval in his old eyes. The decision settles in the smoky air. It's a monumental gamble. The process will cost time and resources. You'll have to call in favors you might need later for something more dire. If you lose, you will not only have your honor besmirched, but you'll be marked as a fool who brought a weak case, making you an even more tempting target. But the alternative, to do nothing, to swallow the poison of Bjornid's insult and let it dissolve your standing in the community, is unthinkable. The path is set. The stones of the law will be thrown. Now you just have to perform the formal, unchangeable ritual to get the whole dangerous process started. The time for deliberation is over. Action is required now, and it must be precise. There's a strange theatricality to it all. You are no longer just an angry neighbor. You are the plaintiff, a formal participant in the intricate machinery of the law. You feel a bit like a child putting on his father's clothes. The role feels too large and important for you, but you have to play the part convincingly or risk ruin. Your Uncle Gunnar, having seen your nervous fidgeting, puts a hand on your shoulder. "Speak it plain and clear," he advises. "No flourishes. The law is not a poem, it is a stone. It must be solid." Wise words, though not particularly calming. At least you don't have to worry about billable hours. This particular legal service is paid for with courage and the risk of spectacular public failure. You gather your witnesses. Eric, your brother, comes along, his hand resting casually on the hilt of his axe. A subtle but clear message that while this is a legal matter, the potential for other solutions is never far from mind. Uncle Gunnar joins you, his presence lending an air of solemnity and experience. You also bring two of your most loyal farmhands, Olaf and Finn. They are steady, quiet men who have been with your family for years. Their role is simple but crucial: to see, to hear, and to remember. In a world without paper, a man's memory is his document, and a shared memory among honest men is an ironclad contract. You are a party of 5, a respectable number that shows you have support, but not so large as to look like a war party seeking to intimidate. Every detail is a calculation. Together you walk the short distance to Bjorn's farmstead. The path is well worn, a muddy track you've walked 1,000 times to borrow a tool or share news. Today it feels like a foreign country. You are acutely aware of the eyes on you. Curtains of hide are twitching in the windows of the other longhouses you pass. This is not a private dispute. It is a community event, the first act of a drama everyone will be following. You feel less like a man walking and more like a piece being moved across a game board for all to see. As you approach Bjorn's home, he steps out to meet you as you knew he would. He's not alone. His own brother and a surly-looking cousin flank him. They stand with their arms crossed, trying to project an aura of unbothered confidence, but you can see the tension in their jaws. They knew this was coming. Your public silence was the promise of a formal response. You stop a respectful distance from his threshold. According to custom, the summons, the Stefna, must be delivered at a man's legal residence, his Heimili. There are even finer points to it. A quirky but important detail of the law stated that the summons should be made loud enough to be heard by those beside the main hearth, the symbolic heart of the home. You plant your feet firmly on the ground, take a breath of the cold, clean air, and try to steady your voice. You picture your uncle's words. The law is a stone. You begin the formula, your voice louder and more formal than your own. I summon you, Bjorn, son of Magnus, for the insult you have given me. You state his full name and patronage, a legal requirement. You name yourself in the same way. I, Leif, son of Harold, am the plaintiff in this matter. You then have to state the charge clearly. You did speak words of nid against me, calling me arger and a coward, thereby causing injury to my honor and my standing. For this I summon you to answer at the Hrafndal to be held in 2 weeks' time, at the rising of the full moon. Finally, you name your witnesses, pointing to each in turn. Eric, son of Harold, is my first witness. Gunnar, son of Ulf, is my second. Olaf, son of Ivar, is my third. Finn, son of Sten, is my fourth. Each of them gives a stoic, almost imperceptible nod as their name is called. Legal historians still debate the exact wording of these summoning formulas, as they likely varied slightly by region and over time, passed down orally for generations. You just hope you've remembered the version your uncle drilled into you correctly. You'd recited it to the sheep earlier and they didn't seem to spot any loopholes, which was vaguely reassuring. For a long moment there is only silence, broken by the bleating of a distant lamb and the sigh of the wind through the pines. Bjorn's face is a mask of thunderous rage, but he says nothing. He cannot contest the summons here. The forum for that is the thing itself. To interfere now would be a grave breach of law, far more serious than a wandering ewe or even a spoken insult. He is legally bound. He has been served. You have done it. The words, ancient and powerful, have been spoken correctly. The ritual is complete. There is no turning back now. You've taken a private grievance and made it a public matter to be settled before the community and the gods. You've exchanged the chaos of a potential brawl for the rigid, dangerous theater of the court. You and your small party turn as one and walk away, the silent, hateful glare of Bjorn and his kin boring into your backs. The first stone has been laid on a long and uncertain path. Now all that's left is the journey to the place where your fate and your honor will be decided. The 2 weeks following the summons pass in a strange, tense limbo. You and Bjorn pointedly ignore each other, communicating only through the hostile glares you exchange when your paths cross. A bubble of silence now separates your farmsteads, a patch of no man's land charged with unspoken animosity. You spend the time preparing. Runa packs sacks with hard, dry flatbread, smoked fish that is more salt than flesh, and a wheel of sharp, crumbly cheese. It's not a feast, but it's fuel, and you'll need it. Eric spends his days sharpening every blade in the longhouse, an activity that seems to soothe his agitated spirit. Uncle Gunnar, meanwhile, sits with you by the fire in the evenings, quizzing you on legal precedents and hypothetical arguments, his lessons punctuated by the crackle of burning logs. It feels less like preparing for a court case and more like cramming for the most important examination of your life. When the day of departure arrives, you leave under a sky the color of a bruised plum. Your small party from the summoning, you, Eric, Gunnar, and your 2 farmhands, is assembled. You are all wearing your best, though still practical, woolen tunics. Eric has his sword strapped to his back, and you carry a sturdy shield, more for show than any real expectation of using it. Projecting strength and preparedness is half the battle. You look back at your longhouse, at Runa standing in the doorway with the children, and a knot of apprehension tightens in your gut. You are leaving the safety and certainty of your world for the great dangerous unknown of the thing. The first day of the journey is through lands you know well. You trudge along familiar paths past the lands of other farmers who nod at you with a knowing look in their eyes. The news of your dispute with Bjorn has undoubtedly spread throughout the small community. By midday, however, you leave the familiar behind, entering a landscape that is wilder, more imposing. The narrow dirt paths give way to rocky goat trails that cling to the sides of steep hills. Historians and archaeologists still debate how extensive the road and trail networks actually were, suggesting many of these journeys were grueling cross-country treks, guided more by landmarks and instinct than by any formal infrastructure. You have to ford a shallow but shockingly cold river, the icy water stealing the breath from your lungs and leaving your legs numb and aching. This is no leisurely stroll, it's an ordeal, a physical price you pay just for the chance to be heard. By the second day, you begin to see them, other travelers. At first, it's just a small group on a distant ridge, their silhouettes dark against the sky. Then you merge onto a more established track and find you are no longer alone. You have joined a slow-moving river of humanity, all flowing in the same direction. There are families in ox-drawn carts piled high with goods, merchants with pack horses laden with wares they hope to sell, and solemn groups of men like yourselves, their faces set with the gravity of their purpose. And then you see him. Across the valley, perhaps half a mile away, is Bjorn's party. He has more men than you do, a fact you're sure is intentional. He has brought several of his powerful cousins, all large, confident men who laugh too loudly. It's a classic move of pre-trial intimidation, a bit of psychological warfare on the road. Remember that showboating we talked about? This is it in action, a flexing of social muscle meant to make you feel small and isolated before you even set foot on the assembly grounds. You make camp that evening in a small meadow, along with a dozen other groups. A low murmur of conversation hangs in the air, but no one speaks of their legal troubles. It's an unspoken rule of the road. You don't show your hand. Instead, you talk of the weather, of the poor harvest last season, of a famed warrior's recent death. You share a bit of your flatbread with a quiet old man who is traveling alone, and he in turn offers you a sip of his ale. Small alliances and momentary trusts are forged around the campfires, but a current of watchfulness runs beneath it all. Everyone is sizing everyone else up. You eat your salty fish and try not to think about how much better it would taste if you weren't on your way to risk everything you own. At least it beats listening to Eric complain about the blister on his heel for the 5th time. On the 3rd day, the landscape begins to flatten out into a wide open plain, bordered by a shimmering lake on one side and a dark, brooding line of hills on the other. The trickle of people has become a flood. You are now part of a massive, sprawling procession. The air is filled with the lowing of cattle, the shouts of men, and the creak of cartwheels. You see a chieftain ride past on a fine horse, his cloak a brilliant, expensive red, a dozen armed retainers following in his wake. His confidence is absolute, his power undeniable. You, a simple farmer, feel a surge of insignificance. What chance do you have in a world of men like that? But then you look at your own small group, at Eric's fierce loyalty, at Gunnar's steady wisdom, and you remember that you are not entirely alone. Your journey is almost over. In the distance, rising above the plain, you can see it. A dozen, then 100, then 1,000 plumes of pale gray smoke climbing into the pewter sky. It's the smoke from the campfires of the Thing. That first glimpse of the smoke on the horizon does little to prepare you for the reality. As you draw closer, the low hum you'd been hearing for the last mile resolves into a cacophony of individual sounds. The clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the boisterous laughter from a group of men sharing a skin of ale, the rhythmic thud of an axe splitting firewood, the babble of 1,000 simultaneous conversations in a dozen different accents. You walk from the quiet emptiness of the wilderness directly into the heart of a sprawling, chaotic, temporary city that has sprung up from the barren ground, like a crop of mushrooms after a rain. This is the Thingstead, the great assembly ground, and for the next week it is the center of your universe. The sheer scale of it is overwhelming. Tents, lean-tos, and more permanent-looking shelters called booter stretch in every direction. These booter are fascinating. Many are built on low stone foundations that remain here year-round, waiting for their owners to return and re-roof them with sailcloth, hides, or freshly cut turf. It's a pop-up city with ancient roots. Archaeological evidence from Thing sites is often sparse, leaving historians to debate the precise layout and scale of these temporary settlements. But to you, it feels like the whole world has decided to camp in this one valley. You and your small party are just another drop in a churning ocean of people. The air is thick with a mixture of smells, a potent brew of wood smoke, roasting meat, damp wool, pine needles, and the undeniable aroma of several thousand unwashed bodies in close proximity. Let's just say personal hygiene standards were a little different back then, and bathing was often considered a special occasion, not a daily routine. You navigate through makeshift laneways, dodging packs of laughing children, a stray dog gnawing on a bone, and a sober-looking man leading a string of ponies laden with furs. There is a clear, if unstated, order to the chaos. The most prominent locations on high ground near the center of the assembly are occupied by the grand shelters of the powerful chieftains, or godar. Their banners, simple geometric designs on dyed cloth, flutter in the breeze, marking their territory. Their men, well-fed and armed with shiny new weapons, stand guard with an air of casual arrogance. As you move toward the periphery, the shelters become more modest. You are in the suburbs of the Thingstead now, the neighborhood for common freeholders like yourself. This is where you need to find a spot. You find a reasonably flat piece of ground near a small stream and set up your meager camp. It is not much more than a lean-to fashioned from a spare woolen cloak and a few sturdy branches, a place to keep the worst of the rain off while you sleep. Next to the impressive turf and stone bud of a wealthy landowner, your setup looks like a child's fort. It's a humbling and very public reminder of your place in the social order. Once camp is established, you take a walk to get the lay of the land. It quickly becomes clear that law is only one of the currencies being traded here. This is the largest market you'll see all year. Merchants have set up stalls selling everything imaginable. A man from the south displays shimmering glass beads and fine whetstones from lands you've only heard of in stories. A local blacksmith has a row of axe heads and spear points laid out on a hide, their edges gleaming with deadly promise. You see women trading homespun cloth for iron pots, and a skald, a professional poet, trying to attract a patron by reciting a loud and bloody verse about a sea king. You even see a man selling trained hunting falcons, their hooded heads perfectly still as the chaos of the thing swirls around them. It's a social and economic nexus. News is exchanged, alliances are forged, marriages are arranged, and goods are traded. Your personal legal drama is just one small thread in this vast, complex tapestry. You see a merchant selling an ornate silver comb for a price that could feed your family for a winter, and decide it must have been personally blessed by Odin to be worth that much. You see your opponent, Bjorn, and his retinue across a crowded clearing. They have secured a better camping spot than you, of course. He's laughing with a man you recognize as a retainer for a powerful local chieftain. He's already politicking, shoring up his alliances, spreading his version of the story. You feel a fresh surge of anxiety. He is working the system, a system you barely understand. All you have is the truth of his insult and the support of your small family. As dusk begins to settle, casting long shadows across the valley, the thousands of campfires begin to glow like embers in the fading light. The noise of the encampment softens to a low murmur. You look towards the center of it all, to a large, flat-topped, rocky outcrop that rises from the valley floor. The Law Rock. That is where it all begins. Tomorrow, the law speaker will stand there and remind everyone, from the highest chieftain to the lowliest farmer, why you have all made this long and difficult journey. The next morning, the air of the encampment has changed. The boisterous, market-like atmosphere of the previous day has been replaced by a palpable sense of anticipation. A great slow current of people is moving, flowing from all corners of the temporary city toward the center, toward the Law Rock. You and your party are swept up in it. You find a place on the grassy slope with a clear view of the gray, flat-topped stone. Thousands of people are here, standing or sitting in quiet contemplation. All the hierarchies of the road and the camp seem to dissolve for a moment. Chieftains with their fine cloaks stand shoulder to shoulder with farmers whose tunics are patched and faded. For this one moment you are all equal, gathered to reaffirm the common law that binds you all. A hush falls over the massive crowd, a silence so profound it seems to have a physical weight. All eyes turn to the rock. A man is climbing the few well-worn steps to its summit. He is not a king or a great warrior. He wears no gleaming helmet and he carries no sword. He is an older man, his hair and beard shot through with gray, his face a roadmap of deep lines etched by years of thought and memory. This is the law speaker, the Logsugumadur. His authority comes not from the strength of his arm, but from the vast invisible library of laws, precedents, and procedures that he holds entirely within his mind. You have to respect the man. He's memorized more legal statutes than you've memorized your own cousins' names, and you have a lot of cousins. He reaches the center of the rock, turns to face the assembly, and raises his hands. He needs no signal. The silence is already absolute, and then he begins to speak. His voice is not booming or theatrical. It is clear, steady, and resonant, carrying across the silent crowd with uncanny force. He is not addressing you. He is giving voice to the law itself. For 3 years, it is his duty to hold this knowledge for the community. And at each annual assembly, it is his duty to recite 1/3 of the entire legal code from memory, ensuring that it remains a living public possession, not something hidden away in a dusty scroll. Today is the day he recites the section on manslaughter, inheritance, and land boundaries. You don't understand every word or every convoluted clause. The language is formal, ancient, and filled with precise definitions. He speaks of Wergild, the price of a man, and the complex calculations for compensation. He details the exact procedures for witnessing a property sale, the number of paces a man must be from a disputed fence when declaring his claim, the fines for grazing your sheep on another man's land. Hearing that last one makes you shift uncomfortably, a fresh reminder of the trivial incident that started this whole terrifying cascade of events. Historians still debate whether the law speaker's recitation was a rote, verbatim performance, or if he had the latitude to interpret and subtly rephrase sections of the law as he spoke, effectively shaping the law in real time. But as you listen, it feels like he is channeling something ancient and unchangeable, a force that was here long before him and will remain long after. The crowd is rapt. Old men nod slowly, their lips moving silently as they follow along with familiar passages. Young men listen with fierce concentration, learning the rules of the world they are inheriting. This is more than a legal proceeding. It is a sacred rite, a communal act of remembering who you are and the rules you have all agreed to live by. The law speaker speaks for what feels like hours, his voice never faltering. His memory is a marvel, a testament to a mind trained for a singular, monumental task. It's a bit of a quirky thought, but you realize he's essentially a salaried, walking, talking law library, paid by the community in silver to be their ultimate legal resource. His job is the world's most stressful public speaking gig, and he doesn't even have notes. As his voice finally falls silent, a collective sigh seems to pass through the crowd. The formal opening of the thing is complete. The ground has been hallowed by the recitation of the law. The assembly begins to break up, people moving away in smaller groups, the low hum of conversation returning. But the mood remains serious. The abstract law has been made real. It now hangs in the air, a tangible presence, and you are about to become subject to its cold, intricate logic. Listening to the law speaker, you felt a sense of awe, but now a new feeling replaces it, a profound sense of your own inadequacy. You know your story is true, but the law speaker spoke of procedures, of deadlines, of the correct number of witnesses for specific claims, of rhetorical traps and legal loopholes. Your simple, honest anger feels like a flimsy wooden shield against a volley of iron-tipped arrows. You cannot do this alone. You need an expert, someone who knows this complex music as well as the law speaker himself. You need to find a champion for your cause. You walk back to your small camp, the law speaker's voice still echoing in your mind. The world, which had seemed so simple and direct that morning, now feels riddled with clauses, subsections, and procedural traps. You sit by your smoldering fire, prodding it with a stick, feeling utterly overwhelmed. Uncle Gunnar, seeing the look on your face, sits beside you. "You see now?" he says, his voice low. "The law is a tangled net. It is meant to catch the guilty, but a clumsy man can easily trip and catch himself. We need a weaver, not a thrasher." His point is painfully clear. Your honest indignation is not enough. You need a weapon, and in this arena the sharpest weapon is a well-trained tongue guided by a deep knowledge of the law. The rest of the day is dedicated to a new kind of hunt, leaving Eric to watch over your camp, a task he accepts with a grim nod, his hand never far from his axe. You and Gunnar begin to move through the Thingstead with purpose. You are talent scouting. There are no shingles advertising legal services, no formal offices. You are looking for a man whose reputation precedes him, a legal expert who can be hired to take up your cause. You're essentially shopping for a lawyer, but your only guides are gossip, observation, and your uncle's keen eye for character. Your first potential candidate is easy to spot. He's a large, red-bearded man named Skapti, and he's holding court near the chieftains' booths. He stands in the center of a large circle of admirers, his voice a booming instrument of self-promotion as he recounts a past legal victory. He gesticulates wildly, his charisma undeniable. He's a performer, and the crowd loves him. You listen for a while as he describes how he humiliated an opponent by trapping him in a web of his own words. He's impressive, certainly, but Gunnar pulls you aside. All hammer, no chisel, your uncle murmurs. He wins by shouting and shaming. Bjorn's people are loud and aggressive already. Fire against fire will just burn the whole field. We need water, someone calm and clever. You move on, feeling a bit like you were trying to pick the right tool for a delicate and dangerous job. You pass a booth where a dispute has broken out between a merchant and a farmer over a horse that was sold. The farmer claims the animal is sick. The merchant swears it was healthy when it left his care. A man is mediating and you and Gunnar stop to listen. This man, Thorstein, is the opposite of Skapti. He is of average height and build with a quiet, thoughtful demeanor. He doesn't raise his voice. Instead, he asks precise, careful questions. When did you first notice the horse's cough? Did it drink from the common trough? Show me the hoof that you say is cracked. He listens intently to both sides, then closes his eyes for a moment in thought. When he opens them, he proposes a solution based on a little-known custom regarding livestock sales at the Thing, a solution that involves a partial refund and a shared responsibility for the horse's care. Both parties, though not thrilled, agree to the terms. They respect the fairness and the logic of it. They respect him. Gunnar gives you a subtle nod. This is your man. Uncle Gunnar knows of him by reputation, calling him a truly law-crafty man, a pillar of sense in a sea of bluster. You have found your champion. Now comes the hard part, convincing him to take your case. Historians debate how formalized the payment for these legal services was, whether it was a direct fee, a share of the settlement, or a more fluid exchange of favors and political support. You will have to offer Thorstein a significant portion of any fine you might win from Bjorn. It's a huge gamble, the Viking version of a contingency fee, but one you have to take. You wait until the horse dispute is settled, and the crowd has dispersed, then you and Gunnar approach Thorstein. You feel like a supplicant before a king. You stand before him, state your name, and then, as clearly and honestly as you can, you lay out your case. You describe the long simmering tensions with Bjorn, the incident with the sheep, and the precise public wording of his insult. You don't embellish or whine. You stick to the facts as they happened, just as you saw him do with the traitors. Thorstein listens without interruption, his gaze steady and unnervingly perceptive. He seems to be looking right through your story to the heart of the matter, weighing not just the facts, but your character, your resolve, and your chances of success. A man like him would not risk his own considerable reputation on a weak case or a dishonorable plaintiff. When you finish, the silence stretches on, thick with your anxiety. Finally, he gives a slow, deliberate nod. The insult is a clear breach, he says, his voice calm and even. The words he used have a specific weight in the law. Your summons was performed correctly. I will speak for you. A wave of relief so profound it almost makes your knees buckle washes over you. You have your champion. The fight is not yet won, but for the first time since Bjorn's ugly words filled your farmyard, you feel you have a fighting chance. Now that you have Thorstein the law-wise on your side, you expect your first meeting to be a deep dive into legal strategy, a flurry of clauses and precedents. Instead, he gathers you, Eric, and Gunnar near the stream, away from prying ears, and gives you your first and perhaps most important instruction. For the next 2 days, he says, his voice calm and low, we do not talk about the law, we talk about everything else. The law is a river, and public opinion is the current. We can try to swim against it, or we can use it to help carry us to where we need to go. You are not just going to court, you are launching a full-blown public relations campaign. It's the most stressful networking event you could possibly imagine, and the stakes are infinitely higher than just landing a new trading partner. Thorstein's instructions are simple, but shrewd. First, he turns to your brother. "Eric," he says with the slightest hint of a smile, "you are a loyal brother, and your strength is a credit to your family. But for now I need you to look less like you are about to avenge a blood feud." Eric scowls, which only proves Thorstein's point. "Try to look peaceful. We want them to see Leif as the calm, wronged man, not as the leader of a war party." Asking Eric to look peaceful is like asking a thunderstorm to be sunny. It goes against his very nature, but he grunts and agrees to try. Your Uncle Gunnar is given a different task. As an elder, he has a natural access to the other senior men of the assembly, the grandfathers and patriarchs who hold immense quiet influence. His job is to sit with them, share a horn of mead, and talk. He is to speak of the old days, of past things, and when the moment is right, to mention you, not your case, but you, how you're a hard worker, how you honor your elders, how you dealt fairly with a neighbor last year over a land dispute. He is to paint a portrait of you, subtly, as a reasonable, solid member of the community. Your role is perhaps the most difficult. You must simply be seen. You are to walk through the camp, greeting people you know and being politely introduced to those you don't. Thorstein advises you to be generous. If a man is thirsty, offer him a sip from your water skin. If he is hungry, give him a piece of your bread. You don't have much, but what you have, you must share. It is a quiet demonstration of character. In a society built on reciprocity, a generous man is a good man. You even take the birchwood spoon you were carving back at the farm. Remember that? And after adding a few finishing touches, you give it to the old man you shared bread with on the journey here. He accepts it with a surprised but grateful nod. It's a tiny gesture, but in the court of public opinion, it's a piece of evidence. Meanwhile, you see Bjorn and his party employing the opposite strategy. They are loud and ostentatious. They swagger through the camp, laughing at the top of their lungs, buying entire skins of ale, and passing them around to anyone who will listen to their boasting. Bjorn tells a dramatic, embellished version of your dispute where he is the patient, long-suffering neighbor, and you are the feckless fool who can't even manage his own livestock. He is trying to win friends through sheer force of personality and the promise of a good time. His is the strategy of the chieftain, buying loyalty. Yours is the strategy of the farmer, earning respect. It's a silent, nerve-wracking war fought in nods, handshakes, and shared moments by the fire. You are constantly aware of being watched. When you speak to a merchant, you know that the men at the next campfire over are listening. When you laugh at someone's joke, you wonder how it is being interpreted. Saga scholars often debate how much of the recorded legal maneuvering reflects historical reality versus how much is a literary embellishment to heighten the drama. But in this moment, it feels utterly real. Your life has become a performance, and the entire thing is your audience and your jury. You spend what little silver you have on a small wheel of cheese from a traveling merchant, just so you can share it with a few neutral parties, Thorstein pointed out. It's the most expensive and uncertain marketing campaign you could ever imagine. By the evening of the second day, you have no real way of knowing if your quiet campaign has worked. Have you swayed anyone? Or has Bjorn's loud confidence won them over? All you know is that you have presented yourself as Thorstein advised, a calm, honorable man pushed too far. The legal court is a formal affair with judges and rules. But this other court, the court of public opinion, is a fickle and powerful beast. Its judgment is rendered in whispers, in shifting alliances, and in the collective murmur of the crowd. As the sun sets, a horn blows, its long, mournful note signaling that the courts will convene on the morrow. The time for talking is over. Now you must prepare for the solemn rituals that will bind you to the judgment of the law. The morning of the trial dawns gray and cold, the sky a seamless blanket of cloud. The horn's call from the previous evening seems to have scoured the levity from the camp, leaving behind a solemn, nervous quiet. There is no more politicking to be done. The time for whispers and sideways glances is over. Today you must speak to the law and to the gods. Thorstein finds you as you are grimly chewing a piece of dry bread that tastes like sawdust in your mouth. He says nothing, but his look is clear. It is time. You, Eric, Gunnar, and your 2 farmhands follow him, your footsteps muted on the damp earth. You are not heading to the Law Rock, but to a smaller, quieter area on the edge of the assembly ground. This is the consecrated space, the Ve. There is no grand temple here, no roof or walls. Historians and archaeologists fiercely debate the nature of these sacred spaces at Thing sites, whether they were actual temple buildings or simply open-air consecrated altars known as hergers. This one is a simple circle of moss-covered stones open to the sky, with a single large flat-topped boulder serving as an altar in the center. A chieftain, one of the local Godar acting in his role as a priest, stands waiting. His face is impassive, his posture rigid. He is not a judge in your case. He is a warden of the sacred, here to ensure the proper rites are observed. On the stone altar rests a single object, a massive coiled silver arm ring. It is thick as your thumb and unadorned, its surface dulled by age and countless hands. This is the holy oath ring, the Bogger. It is an object of immense power and sanctity, a physical link between the world of men and the realm of the gods. You've heard that such rings are sometimes reddened with the blood of sacrificed animals to sanctify them further, and you can almost see a faint dark stain in the crevices of the metal. You also know from your uncle's teachings that the law is characteristically precise even about its sacred objects. A proper oath ring must weigh no less than 2 ounces. You and your key witnesses stand on one side of the altar. A few moments later, Bjorn and his party arrive, standing on the opposite side. The air between you is so thick with tension you feel you could cut it with a knife. There are no insults now, no angry glares. Your eyes meet for only a second, and in that moment, you see the same thing in his face that he must see in yours, a stark, primal fear. What you are about to do is irrevocable. The Godi raises his hands. The court cannot hear a case that has not first been brought before the god, he intones, his voice deep and formal. The truth must be sanctified. He who swears falsely on this ring calls down ruin upon his own head, upon his kin, and upon his crops. The gods are your witnesses, and they are your judges. You are called to go first. Your heart is a frantic drum against your ribs, your palms are slick with sweat. Thorstein gives you a slight, reassuring nod. You step forward into the circle, the damp grass cold through the leather of your shoes. You approach the altar and extend your hand, hesitating for a fraction of a second before placing it flat upon the cold, heavy silver of the ring. The metal is like ice against your skin, its weight a tangible thing, grounding you in the terrifying reality of the moment. Is your cause just? The Godi asks, his eyes boring into you. It is, you reply, your voice a dry rasp. Then swear the oath. You take a deep, shuddering breath and speak the ancient words that Gunnar drilled into you. I call the gods to witness, as I swear on this holy ring that my cause is true. I accuse Bjorn, son of Magnus, of speaking words of need, which the law forbids. May Thor, Odin, and Freyr help me in this as I speak the truth, and abandon me if I lie. Each word feels heavy, a stone being dropped into a deep well. You are binding yourself, your very soul, to the truth of your claim. This is no mere legal formality. You genuinely believe that if you are lying, your next harvest will fail, your children will sicken, and your soul will be cast into a place of cold and darkness. You finish the oath and pull your hand back. A great weight lifts from your chest, replaced by a strange sense of calm. You have done it. You have placed your fate in the hands of the gods. Now you step back and watch as Bjorn is called forward. He walks with his customary swagger, but you see the slight tremor in his hand as he places it upon the ring. He recites his own oath, a denial of your charge, his voice loud and firm. You watch his face, searching for a flicker of doubt, a bead of sweat, any sign that the divine power of the ring is scorching his conscience. You see nothing but defiance. The gods have heard both oaths. Now it is up to men to decide which one rings true. With the oath sworn and the gods invoked, a solemn procession moves from the sacred circle to the court ring, the Domringer. This is where the human judgment will take place. The court is another open-air affair, a wide, roped-off circle on a flat piece of ground. Within it, a panel of judges, 12 powerful chieftains and landowners who form the local Logretta, are seated on a long wooden bench, their faces stern and unreadable. You, Thorstein, and your witnesses stand on one side. Bjorn and his advocate, a boisterous, red-faced man you recognize from the camp, stand on the other. The crowd presses in against the ropes, a silent, living wall of spectators, their collective gaze a heavy weight. Saga narratives are rich with dramatic court scenes, but historians debate whether these accounts capture the typical, mundane reality of legal disputes or only the most sensational, high-profile cases. You certainly hope your case is mundane enough to be straightforward. Thorstein is the first to speak. He steps into the center of the ring and a hush falls. He does not shout or posture. His voice, when he speaks, is the same calm, measured tone he used when mediating the dispute over the sick horse. He begins not with the insult, but with you. He speaks of your family's history in the region, of your reputation as a hard-working farmer who has always dealt fairly with his neighbors. He is not just arguing a case. He is presenting a character. In a court with no written records, a man's history, his ordster or reputation, is the foundational piece of evidence. He is establishing you as a credible plaintiff, a man not prone to frivolous accusations. Then he lays out the facts of the incident, his narrative clean and unadorned. He describes the initial petty argument over the sheep, and then he quotes Bjorn's words precisely as you and your witnesses remember them. He lets the ugly, legally potent terms, arger, coward, hang in the air, their venom palpable. He argues that this was not a simple loss of temper. It was a calculated public attack designed to inflict a wound, not to your flesh, but to your honor. And like a physical wound, a sar, its severity is measured by how many people saw it. And there were those who saw, Thorstein says, turning to your witnesses. He calls your brother Eric first. Eric, looking uncharacteristically subdued after his lecture on appearing peaceful, steps forward. He recounts the events tersely, his words clipped and factual. He repeats the insult he heard Bjorn speak. The defense advocate tries to interrupt, suggesting Eric is just a biased brother, but Thorstein calmly holds up a hand. His loyalty to his brother is not in question, Thorstein says to the judges. What is in question is whether he is telling the truth, and we have sworn before the gods that we are. The appeal to the morning's solemn oath silences the other advocate immediately. Next, he calls your farmhands Olaf and Finn. Before they even speak, Thorstein establishes their credibility, their witness fastness. He asks them for the court to hear how many years they have served your family. He confirms they are free men, not thralls, with small plots of their own. This is crucial. The testimony of a free man holds more weight than that of a slave. They are, in the eyes of the law, legally sound. One after the other, they step forward and in their own simple, unpolished words, they tell the court exactly what they heard. Their stories are identical to Eric's. Their plain-spoken honesty is more powerful than any fiery rhetoric. You never thought your quiet, hard-working farmhands would be the star witnesses in your life's great drama. You briefly worry they might ask for a raise after this. Thorstein brings his argument to a close. He has presented no documents, no physical exhibits. His evidence is composed of three things: your good name, the public nature of the offense, and the sworn testimony of credible men. The law is clear, he says, addressing the judges directly. It was created to provide a path to justice that does not require the spilling of blood. My client, Leif, son of Harold, has chosen this path. He has suffered a public wound to his honor, a wound witnessed by these good men. He asks for the only remedy the law provides, a restoration of that honor through fair compensation. He steps back. The first half of the battle is over. You watch the faces of the judges. A few of them nod slowly, considering the weight of the testimony. The crowd murmurs, the sound like a rising wind. It feels like it has gone well. Thorstein's calm, logical presentation has built a solid, compelling case. But a chilling thought snakes into your mind. This has all been a bit too easy, and now it is the other side's turn to speak. Your advocate, Thorstein, steps back to your side, and you allow yourself a brief, hopeful moment. The case seems strong, the testimony clear, but your feeling that things were going too smoothly proves to be a dark premonition. The moment Bjorn's advocate steps into the center of the ring, the entire atmosphere of the court shifts. His name is Hrolf, and he is the loud, red-bearded man your uncle had warned you about. Where Thorstein was a calm river, Hrolf is a forest fire. He is all heat, noise, and aggressive energy. He begins not with a legal argument, but with a sneer. Great chieftains, honorable farmers, esteemed men of the law, he booms, his voice dripping with sarcasm as he gestures vaguely in your direction. We are called here today away from our homes, our fields, and our families to weigh a matter of the gravest importance. A matter of a sheep. He lets the word hang in the air, making it sound ridiculous, trivial. A few of Bjorn's supporters in the crowd chuckle. In an instant, he has reframed your grievance not as a defense of honor, but as a petty squabble unworthy of this great assembly. You feel a hot flush of anger. Thorstein places a steadying hand on your arm, his message clear. Stay calm. This is a performance. But it is difficult to remain impassive as you watch Hrolf begin to dismantle your reputation with vicious skill. He never denies that Bjorn spoke the words. That would be a foolish lie in the face of 4 witnesses. Instead, he launches into a cunning counter-narrative, a strategy of character assassination known as manjafnader, or man comparison. His goal is simple, to make you look as bad, or worse, than his client. My opponent's skilled speaker, Hrolf says with a dismissive wave at Thorstein, would have you believe that Bjorn, a man known for his hardy spirit, simply attacked this poor, innocent farmer out of nowhere. But I ask you, judges, does a man shout without reason? Does a pot boil without a fire beneath it? This is his strategy. He is going to build that fire lie by lie, exaggeration by exaggeration. He calls Bjorn's brother Sturla as his first witness. Sturla, a hulking man with a sour expression, tells the court about the sheep. But in his telling, it wasn't one sheep one time. It was a constant invasion, a flock of ill-managed beasts that perpetually ravaged Bjorn's meticulously kept garden. He speaks of your neglect and disrespect for a neighbor's property. It's a gross exaggeration, but not a complete fabrication, which makes it all the more venomous. Next, he calls Bjorn's surly-looking cousin, who testifies that last winter you refused to help Bjorn pull a stuck cart from the mud. The truth is you were sick with a fever that day. A fact Hrolf conveniently instructs the cousin not to mention. One by one, he strings together a series of petty, twisted incidents, each one a tiny thread of truth woven into a great tapestry of lies. He is painting a portrait of you as a passive-aggressive nuisance, a man who hides his malice behind a quiet exterior. It is a matter of ongoing scholarly discussion to what extent these character attacks were a standard part of legal rhetoric, or a tactic reserved for particularly bitter disputes. But Hrolf is using it with the skill of a master butcher. He even uses a bit of folk wisdom to drive his point home, a trick to make his argument sound like common sense. They say a small leak will sink a great ship, Hrolf intones gravely to the judges. And for years my client has endured these small leaks. A broken fence here, a wandering goat there, a sour look, a refused request for aid. Each a small thing, yes, but over time they will founder the strongest vessel of patience. Finally, Hrolf reaches the climax of his argument. He reframes the insult itself. So yes, he concedes, turning to the judges with an expression of earnest frankness. After years of this quiet disrespect, did Bjorn's patience finally break? Did he speak his frustration in plain, harsh words? He did. He called him timid, unable to manage his own farm. Tell me, judges, where is the lie? To speak a hard truth is not nid. It is honesty. Is a man now to be punished for speaking plainly what everyone can see? He lets the poisonous question linger in the air before stepping back. The effect is devastating. Your simple, clear-cut case of slander has been twisted into a complex drama of neighborhood politics in which you are the villain. The judges, who had been nodding along with Thorstein's presentation, now look troubled, their gazes shifting between you and Bjorn. The murmur of the crowd has changed too. You can hear the doubt in their whispers. The solid ground Thorstein had built for you has crumbled into quicksand, and you can feel yourself sinking. Just when you think Hrolf's brutal character assassination is complete, he holds up a hand for silence, a smirk playing on his lips. He isn't finished. He has one more weapon to deploy, one you never could have anticipated. The measure of a man is not only in his own words, Hrolf announces to the court, but in the words that poets speak of him. He turns and beckons to a man standing near Bjorn's retinue. The man who steps forward is not a warrior or a farmer. He is lean and wiry, with restless, intelligent eyes that seem to see everything. He carries no axe, but you get the sense he is the most dangerous man on their side. He is a skald, a professional poet, a master of the most prestigious and powerful art form you know. Your heart sinks. This is a move of pure arrogance, a display of wealth and status. A good skald is expensive to retain, a luxury for chieftains and kings. By employing one here, Bjorn is sending a clear message. I am an important man, a man worthy of song, while my opponent is a nobody. It's a masterful piece of political theater. You glance at Thorstein, whose calm expression has finally tightened into a grim line. He didn't see this coming either. Suddenly, this feels less like a court of law and more like a poetry competition that you are about to spectacularly lose. You should have brought your cousin, who's known for his bawdy drinking songs, but somehow you doubt it would have the same effect. The skald steps into the center of the ring. He needs no introduction. His reputation is his calling card. He plants his feet, takes a deep breath, and begins to recite. It is not a speech. It is a chant, a rhythmic, percussive performance that is as much music as it is language. The verse is in the drotkvet style, the most complex and respected of meters, a dense web of internal rhymes, strict syllabic counts, and most importantly, head rhymes, or alliteration. The effect is hypnotic, drawing the entire assembly into its powerful cadence. The poem is ostensibly a verse of praise for his patron Bjorn. The skald uses soaring language and intricate metaphors or kennings to build a heroic image of your neighbor. He calls Bjorn a feeder of ravens and a battle tree, complex poetic descriptions for a great warrior. He is a ring giver, a kenning for a generous lord. He is the masthead dragon's master, meaning the captain of a mighty longship. You struggle to follow the labyrinthine grammar which twists sentences inside out for poetic effect. It's a known feature of the high skaldic style. Understanding it is a mark of a sophisticated mind, and you feel like a clumsy child trying to decipher the speech of adults. But as the poem progresses, you begin to catch the other side of it. Woven into the praise for Bjorn are subtle poisoned barbs aimed directly at you. This is the true genius and terror of a skilled skald. While he celebrates Bjorn as a raging surf steeds rider, a mariner, a man of action, he uses kennings for you that are deliberately mundane and diminishing. You are a fence mender, a soil scrabbler, a keeper of sheep. These are not insults in themselves, they are after all what you do. But in contrast to the heroic imagery used for Bjorn, they paint you as a pathetic earthbound creature, a man concerned with petty things while great men are concerned with glory. The crowd is captivated. Even the judges are leaning forward, caught up in the performance. The poet's final stanza is his most vicious. He subtly references the dispute, framing Bjorn as a warden of honor who was forced to confront a whispering weasel. He doesn't name you, but everyone knows who he means. The insult is delivered, but it's wrapped in such masterful poetry that it's almost impossible to challenge directly. It bypasses logic and reason and attacks you on a deep cultural level. While sagas often mention skalds reciting poems at critical moments, historians debate how common it was to employ a poet as a direct rhetorical weapon within a formal legal proceeding itself. Real or not, it's brutally effective. The skald falls silent. The last alliterative line echoes in the stunned quiet of the court ring. Then the crowd murmurs its approval. They have just witnessed a masterful performance. They are impressed by the poet's skill and, by extension, by the status of the man who hired him. Hrolf stands with a triumphant smirk. He has not only defended his client, he has provided entertainment and high art. He has made Bjorn look like a hero, and you like a fool. The foundation of facts and testimony that Thorstein so carefully built has been washed away by a flood of beautiful, poisonous words. You look at your advocate, your face a mask of desperation. How in the world can you fight back against a poem? The skald's final venomous words fade, but the impression they left on the assembly is as tangible as a freshly carved rune stone. Hrolf has played his final card, and it was a devastating one. He gives a theatrical bow, a gesture of triumph, and returns to Bjorn's side. The head of the Lagreta, a grim-faced, white-bearded chieftain named Ulfar, rises slowly to his feet. He holds up a hand and the excited chatter of the crowd dies instantly. "The judges have heard the arguments," he says, his voice a low rumble that carries across the court ring. "We will now withdraw to deliberate." And with that, the 12 men on the bench stand as one and file out of the ring. They don't go far, just to a nearby chieftain's spacious booth, its hide flap pulled shut behind them. But they might as well have traveled to another realm. For now, their thoughts are the only thing in the world that matters, and they are completely hidden from you. The action, the argument, the performance, it's all over. All that's left is this: a vast, silent, agonizing wait. You are left standing in the center of this ring of judgment, a prisoner of suspense. Time seems to slow down and warp. Every second stretches into a minute. The sun, which had been hidden, breaks through the clouds, and its sudden warmth on your face feels like a cruel joke. The crowd, no longer bound by the formality of the proceedings, begins to talk amongst themselves in low, urgent whispers. You can't make out the words, but you can feel the shifting tides of their opinion. You see heads turning your way, then quickly looking away. You see others nodding in the direction of Bjorn, who is now surrounded by his supporters, accepting their backslaps and laughing as if the victory is already his. His confidence is a physical blow, designed to unnerve you, and it's working. This must be what a sheep feels like in the pen, watching the farmers talk, knowing a decision is being made but having no way to influence it. You look to your own small group. Eric is vibrating with suppressed rage, his knuckles white where he grips the handle of his axe. Gunnar is stroking his beard, his eyes closed as if trying to puzzle out the secret thoughts of the judges. You turn to Thorstein. "What now?" you ask, your voice barely a whisper. Your advocate's face is a mask of concentration. He is watching the booth where the judges are deliberating, as if he could pierce its walls with his gaze. "Now, we wait," he says. Hrolf's strategy was clever. He muddied the waters. Some of those judges will be swayed by the poem and the character attacks. Our hope is that the wiser heads among them will stick to the facts of the original insult and the credibility of our witnesses. He then gives you a quick, grim assessment of the judges themselves. Historians and legal scholars debate the degree to which these judges were expected to be impartial arbiters versus powerful men protecting their own interests and alliances under the guise of law. Thorstein seems to have no such debate in his mind. Ulfar, the head judge, is a fair man. He prides himself on it. But Halfdan, the one with the scarred face, is a kinsman of Bjorn's wife. We will not have his vote. It all comes down to the ones in the middle, the men who value the stability of the law over personal feelings. His cold analysis is both terrifying and strangely comforting. This isn't just a random outcome. It's a complex political calculation, a weighing of allegiances, reputations, and legal principles. But that doesn't make the waiting any easier. You start to think about what happens if you lose. Not only will your honor be permanently stained, but you will be humiliated. You brought a case and lost. You will be seen as both a coward and a fool, an irresistible target for every bully and opportunist in the region. You might even be liable for a counterclaim from Bjorn for bringing a frivolous case. The stakes are impossibly high. The hide flap of the booth twitches. Your breath catches in your throat, but it's just a child running past. You let out the breath in a shaky sigh. A hawk circles high overhead, riding the wind, and for a moment you envy its freedom, its lofty indifference to the petty squabbles of men below. The wait is so long you feel like you could have learned skaldic poetry from scratch and composed a rebuttal in the time they've been gone. Finally, after an eternity that the sun says was probably less than an hour, the flap is thrown open. The 12 judges emerge, their faces as grim and stony as when they left. The crowd falls silent once more, a wave of quiet spreading from the center outwards. The judges file back to their bench, their expressions giving nothing away. They take their seats and the world seems to hold its breath. Ulfar, the head chieftain, remains standing. He looks at you, then at Bjorn, then he clears his throat to speak. In the impossibly long second before Ulfar speaks, while the world hangs suspended in a drop of silence, your gaze flicks away from the judges. It's an instinctive act of self-preservation, a flinching from the impending verdict. Your eyes scan the crowd, searching for an anchor, and they land on your wife, Runa. She has come from the camp and is standing at the edge of the assembly. Near the ropes, her expression as unreadable as any of the chieftains on the bench. Her hands, you notice, are clenched so tightly at her sides that her knuckles are white. Seeing her there triggers a cascade of understanding. You realize how much you have been thinking of this as your fight, your honor, your trial, but that is the foolishness of a man. In truth, it has been our fight from the very beginning. Women are barred from this space. They cannot speak in the court ring, they cannot act as witnesses, they cannot be judges. The formal mechanisms of law and power are a theater for men, but the foundations upon which that theater is built, the wealth, the alliances, the very stability of the households that give the men here their standing, that is the domain of women. Historians continue to debate the full extent of women's informal political power, trying to piece together a picture from sagas often written by men and for men. But from where you're standing, that power feels profoundly real. You remember the council in your longhouse after the insult. It was Runa who immediately grasped the economic and strategic realities. While Eric was thinking of his axe, she was calculating the potential cost in silver, weighing the strength of Bjorn's kin against your own. As the husfreyja, the mistress of the household, she holds the keys to the stores. She manages the weaving, the preserving of food, the finances. This entire legal challenge, the days away from the farm, the cost of provisions for the journey, the fee you have promised to Thorstein, is funded by the wealth she commands. Her approval was not a suggestion, it was a prerequisite. Without her shrewd management, you would have no case because you would have no resources. You think of the term some poets use for women of high standing, Frid Webba or peace weavers. It refers to their role in creating alliances through marriage, weaving disparate families into a strong social fabric. Your own marriage to Runa brought with it the support of her kin, a crucial factor in your family's standing, but you now see that the name is incomplete. They can weave peace, but they can also stoke the fires of a just conflict. Runa's quiet, steely anger at the insult Bjorn had thrown at you, at the threat it posed to the family she had built, was as potent a force as Eric's open rage. She did not counsel rashness, but she did not counsel weakness either. Her voice was the anchor that kept the family council from drifting into foolish violence or shameful inaction. Then, your gaze shifts across the clearing. You see Bjorn's wife, Ingrid, and what you see makes the blood run cold in your veins. She is standing near her kinsman, Halfdan the Scarred, the very judge Thorstein had identified as a lost vote. She is not speaking to him loudly, but her posture is one of urgent, quiet persuasion. Her hands are gesturing subtly, her eyes are locked on his. You are witnessing it, right there in the open. You are seeing the invisible threads of power being pulled. She is reminding him of the bonds of blood and marriage, of the obligations he has to her and her family. She is doing her work, fighting for her household, just as Runa has been fighting for hers. Her influence will not be recorded. It is not an official part of the proceedings, but it is as real as the bench the judges are sitting on. It dawns on you that this entire public spectacle, this masculine drama of oaths and advocates and judgments, is only the visible part of the conflict. Underneath it, there is a deeper, quieter struggle, a contest of households managed by intelligent women, a war fought with resources, reputation, and the subtle, powerful pressures of kinship. Runa's strength is in her calm, her wisdom, her careful management. Ingrid's is in her influential connections and her willingness to use them. A sharp, rasping cough from the center of the court ring shatters your revelation. It's Ulfar, clearing his throat. Your head snaps back to him, your heart hammering against your ribs. The moment of reflection is over. The world has crashed back into this single, terrifying point in time. The verdict is coming. Ulfar's throat clearing seems to echo in the unnatural silence. He plants his feet wide, his hands clasped behind his back. and his gaze sweeps across the assembly before settling on the two opposing parties. When he speaks, his voice is the slow, grinding sound of stone on stone. It is the voice of finality. The court has weighed this matter, he begins, and you feel your stomach clench into a tight, cold knot. We have heard testimony of a long, simmering dispute between neighbors. We have heard of wandering sheep and broken fences. The advocate Hrolf speaks with the heat of a forge fire, and he is right that a man's patience has its limits. Your heart plummets. He is starting with their argument. He is siding with them. You feel Thorstein's hand press lightly on your shoulder, a silent command to show no reaction. However, Ulfar continues, and the word hangs in the air, charged with possibility. The law does not make exceptions for a short temper, and it is especially clear on the matter of a man's honor, which is the foundation of his worth. The law recognizes that a public insult is a public wound. It is a theft of a man's good name, as real as the theft of his livestock. He pauses, and his eyes lock onto Bjorn. There are specific words that carry a legal weight, for they are not just insults, but attempts to unman another. The court has heard sworn testimony from 4 credible witnesses that such words were used. He takes a deep breath. This is it. Therefore, the Lugretta finds that the words spoken by Bjorn, son of Magnus, against Leif, son of Harald, do constitute nid, as defined by the law of this assembly. The words take a moment to register. You stare at him, uncomprehending, and then it hits you. A wave of relief so powerful it makes you dizzy crashes over you, and you feel your knees tremble. You have won. The tension that has been coiling in your gut for weeks, a cold and heavy serpent, finally unspools. You want to shout, to laugh, to collapse onto the grass. Beside you, Eric lets out a triumphant grunt and claps you on the back so hard you nearly stumble. Gunnar simply nods, a slow, satisfied smile finally gracing his lips. Across the ring, Bjorn's face is a terrifying mask of shock and fury, his skin turning a blotchy, furious red. But Ulfar is not finished. He raises his hand to quell the rising murmur of the crowd. This is not a matter of punishment, he declares, his voice cutting through the noise. It is a matter of restoration. A wound has been opened and it must be closed with silver. A price must be paid to make the plaintiff whole again. He is explaining the very core of your legal system, a concept that feels both profoundly just and strangely transactional. Anthropologists and legal historians often discuss whether this system of monetary compensation successfully reduced violence or simply monetized it, turning feuds into financial transactions. Right now, you don't care about the academic theory. You only care about the practical result. For an insult of this nature, Ulfar continues, spoken in public and witnessed, the law sets a clear price. It is a serious offense, a wound dealt to a man in his own home field, a trespass against his very standing. Therefore, the court rules that Bjorn, son of Magnus, shall pay to Leif, son of Harald, a compensation, a bog, of a half-mark of silver. A half-mark. That's 4 ounces of pure silver. It's a significant amount. It's not enough to make you rich, but it is a substantial sum that will be a painful loss for Bjorn. It's enough to buy a good milk cow and a couple of pigs. It's a public, quantifiable statement of your worth. You glance at Thorstein, who gives you a single, sharp nod of approval. It is a good, just verdict. You've just won the most emotionally draining lawsuit in history, and your grand prize is essentially the value of some high-quality livestock. It feels both like a monumental victory and a bizarrely agricultural transaction. The court is officially concluded. Ulfar and the other judges rise and disperse, their duty done. The ropes of the court ring are dropped, and the crowd surges inward. A few people you know from your travels come to offer their congratulations. You feel a dazed, floating sense of vindication. But as you watch Bjorn storming away, his face like a thundercloud, surrounded by his equally furious kinsmen, a new and unsettling thought begins to form. The court has given you a verdict. It has named a price for your honor. But the piece of paper, the bailiff, the armed guard who will ensure that price is paid, none of those things exist here. You have a judgment, but you have no enforcement. You return to your humble camp in a state of dazed triumph. The news of your victory has preceded you, and even the families camped nearby offer you nods of respect that were not there that morning. Your victory is now a fact, a part of the social record of the Thing. Eric is in high spirits, sharpening his axe with a cheerful grin that is far more unsettling than his usual scowl. Gunnar has produced a small skin of surprisingly good mead he had saved for either a victory or a consolation, and its sweetness is a welcome balm. You and your small party sit around the fire, a tight circle of relief and vindication. Thorstein, the law-wise, is with you, and you pour him the first and best horn of mead. You owe him more than just a portion of the fine. You owe him your honor. As the initial euphoria begins to fade, it's replaced by a deep curiosity about the machinery of the law you have just witnessed. A half mark of silver, you say to Thorstein, who is sipping his mead with quiet satisfaction. It feels like a number plucked from the sky. How do the judges arrive at such a thing? Thorstein allows himself a small, scholarly smile. It is not plucked from the sky, he explains, his voice taking on the tone of a master craftsman explaining his tools. It is taken from the great catalog of the law itself. You think of the law as a set of rules, but it is also a set of accounts. Every man and every part of a man has a price. He leans forward, and you find yourself listening with the same intensity you had in the court ring. It begins with the Wergild, he says, the man price. To kill a free man like you or me, the price to be paid to his family to prevent a blood feud is 100 marks of silver. A vast sum, the price of a great farm. Every other compensation is a fraction of that. You are stunned. 100 marks. Your mind reels at the number. Your entire life, your existence as a husband, father, and farmer, has a precise astronomical value in the cold accounting of the law. From there, Thorstein continues, warming to his subject, the law becomes a butcher's chart. A man's body is broken down and valued. To take a man's leg is a terrible injury. It cripples his ability to farm and fight. The price is high, half his Wergild. An arm is slightly less. An eye, a hand, a foot, each is worth a quarter of the full man price. He sees the look of morbid fascination on your face and continues, but the law is more detailed than that. Far more detailed. It concerns itself with the smallest of parts. To break a rib costs an ounce of silver. To knock out a front tooth is a half ounce, for the shame of the gap is part of the wound. A back tooth hidden from sight is worth only half that. It's strangely comforting to know that if someone causes you grievous bodily harm, there's at least a detailed price list you can consult afterwards. He holds up his hand to illustrate. And the fingers. The law does not just value the hand, it values each part. The thumb is the most precious, for without it a man cannot properly grip an axe or a tool. Losing a thumb costs as much as losing all 4 other fingers combined. And it goes deeper still. There are prices for the loss of a fingernail, for a wound that leaves a scar on the face versus one hidden under a tunic. He taps his own temple. A visible wound costs more than a hidden one. Your wound from Bjorn was to your honor, but it was visible to all who heard it. That is why the price was high. You listen utterly captivated. This is the hidden architecture of your world, a system both brutal and breathtakingly logical. It is a society's attempt to quantify everything, life, limb, and even honor, to create a common currency of justice that can replace the chaotic and ruinous currency of blood. Legal historians still debate how consistently these complex fine schedules were actually applied in practice, or if they served more as a starting point for negotiation between feuding families. But to you, hearing it from Thorstein, it sounds like an immutable set of natural laws. After paying Thorstein his agreed-upon share from the fine you have yet to collect, he gives you a final piece of advice. You have the court's judgment. That is a powerful weapon, but the law has no arms or legs. It does not walk to your neighbor's farm and take the silver from his purse. He looks you squarely in the eye. The court gives you the right to collect the debt. The task of collecting it is now yours. And just like that, the warm glow of victory is chilled by a cold draft of reality. You have won the battle in the court ring, a battle of words, witnesses, and reputation. But a final, more dangerous battle may yet remain. The practical physical act of extracting the price of your honor from a furious, humiliated, and very unwilling neighbor. The conversation with Thorstein leaves you in a sober, reflective mood. Your victory is real, but its final chapter has yet to be written. As your small group begins to prepare the evening meal, a sudden sharp cry from the direction of the main assembly area cuts through the camp's low hum. It's not a cry of joy or anger, but something sharper, more guttural. A commotion is brewing. Another court case, one that had been running all day, is evidently reaching its conclusion. Drawn by a morbid curiosity, you and your kinsman leave your fire and walk closer, joining the thick press of people craning to see into the court ring. The scene inside is starkly different from your own trial. A single man stands in the center, his head bowed. He is accused of a far greater crime than yours. The whispers in the crowd tell the story. He ambushed and killed a rival over a land dispute, but did so at night, from behind, a deed considered dishonorable murder rather than a fair killing. Worse, when accused, he swore a false oath of innocence on the holy ring. He has offended not only the community of men, but the realm of the gods. Ulfar the chieftain stands before him, not as a deliberator, but as a mouthpiece for a judgment that is absolute. There is no talk of compensation, no calculation of a fine in silver. The crime is too great. The trust of the community has been too grievously broken. You have spilled blood in darkness and lied to the gods in the light. Ulfar's voice booms, and this time there is no nuance, only iron. You have broken faith with all who live under the law. You have made yourself a man without worth, without kin, without honor. Ulfar raises a hand and points a single damning finger at the accused. Therefore, this court declares you Skaganger. You are an outlaw. You are cast out from the protection of the law. Your property is forfeit to those you have wronged. Your wife is now a widow, your children fatherless. You are a man with no home, no rights, and no name. A collective, fearful gasp ripples through the crowd. This is the ultimate sentence, a punishment so severe it is considered a fate worse than a quick death. This is social and legal annihilation. From this moment, Ulfar continues, his voice ringing with the finality of a death sentence, you are to be given no food, no water, no shelter. Any man who aids you will share your fate. You are a Vargar I Veum, a wolf in the sacred places. You have the name of a beast and you shall be hunted like one. Any man may kill you on sight, without penalty, and indeed will be rewarded for doing so. The ritualistic, dehumanizing language is terrifying. It's a legal incantation that strips a man of his personhood. As the last word is spoken, something profound and terrible happens. The handful of men, brothers and cousins of the accused, you assume, who had been standing near him now visibly, deliberately, take 2 steps back. They sever their connection to him in a single public movement. In an instant, he is utterly, existentially alone, surrounded by hundreds of people who have just been given legal permission to kill him. Saga scholars and historians discuss whether the dramatic scenes of a man becoming an outlaw on the spot were the norm, or if many simply fled before a verdict they knew was coming. This man did not flee, and now his fate is sealed. He is given no time to plead or argue. One of the chieftain guards gives him a hard shove toward the edge of the camp that faces the wild, untamed lands. You have until the sun touches the western hills, the guard growls. Then the hunt begins. You watch, frozen, as the man, the outlaw, the wolf, stumbles away. He doesn't run. He walks with the slow, shuffling gait of a man already dead. No one speaks to him. No one meets his eye. A path opens before him through the crowd as if he is carrying a deadly plague. He is a ghost walking away from his own life. You watch his lonely figure recede, a small silhouette against the vast, indifferent landscape of forest and mountain, the Skog that has now become both his only refuge and his eternal prison. A deep chill settles over you, a cold that has nothing to do with the evening air. Your own problems, which seemed so large only an hour ago, now feel small and manageable. You have to collect a debt from an angry neighbor. That outlaw has to survive in a world where every single person is his legal executioner. You turn from the grim spectacle and look at your own companions, Eric, Gunnar, your loyal farmhands. You are still part of a whole. You have a home to return to. You have a place in the world. You have fought for your honor and won, and in doing so, you have avoided a fate so dark, it is almost impossible to comprehend. You walk back to your fire in a somber silence. The image of the lone outlaw walking toward the wilderness burned into your mind. The sweet taste of the victory mead has turned to ash in your mouth. Even Eric is quiet, his usual belligerence replaced by a grim thoughtfulness. The raw, brutal power of the law has been laid bare, and it has unsettled you all to the core. You poke at the fire, the cheerful crackle of the flames doing little to dispel the chill that has settled deep in your bones. Seeing the mood, Uncle Gunnar takes a long, slow drink from his horn of mead and clears his throat. It is a hard thing to see, he says, his voice a low rumble. But the law must have teeth, or it is only words. It is the wall that stands between us and the chaos of endless feud. He looks around at your small, troubled circle. But this is only a local thing, a small court for small matters. It is a stout and sturdy wall, but you should see the great fortress. He has your attention. You look up from the fire, grateful for the change of subject. When I was a young man, Gunnar begins, a far-off look in his eyes, I sailed with a chieftain to Iceland, to the Althing, the great assembly for the entire land. You lean forward, captivated. You have heard tales of the Althing, of course, but they are like myths, stories of a grand and distant place. Gunnar speaks of it as a real memory. Our little Thingstead here, with its few hundred souls, would be but a single chieftain's camp there, he says with a wry smile. At the Althing, thousands gather. They travel for weeks, from every corner of that cold, rugged island, sailing down the coast, trekking over mountains of ice. The journey itself is a great undertaking, and they all gather at a place called Thingvellir, the Assembly Plains. He describes the place not as a simple field, but as a landscape forged by gods. It is a great valley, torn open in the earth, with a vast cliff of black rock along one side. That is their law rock, their Logberg. The law speaker stands upon it, and the rock wall behind him throws his voice out across the plain so that thousands can hear him. They even diverted a river, they say, to run through the plain, to bring fresh water to the camps. You try to imagine the scene. Not hundreds of campfires, but thousands. A city of tents and booths stretching for miles, nestled in a valley ripped open by ancient forces. Your own legal drama, the sheep, the insult, the agonizing wait for the verdict, feels impossibly small, a village squabble in the shadow of this epic gathering. That is where the great laws are made for all the land, Gunnar continues, and it is where the most difficult cases are settled. Your dispute with Bjorn is a matter for our local judges, but a feud between two mighty chieftains, a case where the law is unclear, or a verdict from a lesser thing that is contested, those are brought to the Althing. It is the final court of appeal. He mentions the existence of a fifth court there, a kind of high council of the wisest chieftains designed to untangle the hardest legal knots that no one else could solve. Listening to him, you begin to understand your own experience in a much broader context. You are not just a farmer who won a case. You are a participant in a legal tradition that is vast, ancient, and extends across the entire Norse world. The principles that governed your trial, the sworn oaths, the reliance on witnesses, the system of compensation, are the same principles that operate on that grand stage in Iceland, just magnified 100-fold. Historians debate just how much national unity the Althing truly fostered, with some arguing it was often a stage for the power struggles of a few dominant families, rather than a truly representative assembly. But in Gunnar's telling, it is the beating heart of a society built on the ideal of law. A man who is outlawed there, Gunnar says, his voice dropping as he brings the story back to the grim event you just witnessed, is outlawed from the world of men itself. There is no corner of the Norse lands where he can find refuge. The judgment of the Althing is final. His story ends. The fire has burned down to a bed of glowing coals. The camp around you is quiet now, most people having retired to their shelters. Eric is already snoring softly, the tension of the day finally releasing him into sleep. Gunnar's story has worked its magic. It has not erased the horror of the outlaw's fate. but it has placed it within a grand and ordered system. It has reminded you that for all its harshness, the law is what allows you to sleep peacefully, to build a farm, to raise a family. It is the great, shared agreement. You lie down, wrapped in your cloak, with images of a vast plain of black rock and 1,000 campfires burning in your mind, feeling like a single small thread in a tapestry of immense and staggering complexity. You wake the next morning not to a nervous silence, but to a roar. The sound is a cheerful, chaotic blend of laughter, shouting, and the distant rhythm of a man beating on a makeshift drum. The legal tension that has held the Thingstead in its grip for days has snapped, and in its place a wild, festive energy has been unleashed. The Great Assembly has now entered its final phase. The courts are closed, the taverns of the soul are open. It has transformed from a solemn legal gathering into a raucous, week-long party, where the real currency is no longer silver, but ale and influence. The air, once thick with anxiety, is now hazy with the smoke of 100 cooking fires, and the smell of roasting meat hangs heavy and delicious. Chieftains, their legal duties discharged, are now focused on their social and political ones. To demonstrate their wealth and generosity, they have slaughtered pigs and oxen, and the feasting has begun. Men walk around with entire roasted ribs in their fists, grease shining on their beards. Large skins of mead and ale are passed freely among friends, and more importantly, among potential new allies. This isn't just a celebration, it's the annual shareholder meeting for the entire region. And a lot of business is about to get done over lukewarm beer and charred meat. You and your party join in, though on a more modest scale. You share the last of Gunnar's good mead, and your victory makes it taste all the sweeter. For the first time in weeks, you can see Eric genuinely relax, laughing at a joke with your farmhand Finn. Your own status has subtly shifted. You are no longer just another farmer with a grievance. You are Leif, son of Harold, the man who stood up to a bully and won his case through proper legal means. Men who wouldn't have given you a second glance 2 days ago now nod to you in greeting. A farmer from a neighboring valley, a man you've never met, comes over to your fire, offers you a drink from his horn and congratulates you. "Well done," he says. Bjorn has been an arrogant neighbor for too long. It was good to see him brought down a peg by an honest man. This small, unsolicited vote of confidence is almost as satisfying as the verdict itself. While the common folk drink, wrestle, and trade, you watch the great game being played by the powerful. It's a masterclass in political maneuvering. You see the two chieftains who had been on opposite sides of a contentious inheritance case yesterday, now sharing a horn of mead, their heads bent close in conspiratorial conversation. Their followers, who had been glaring at each other across the court ring, are now mingling cautiously. An alliance is being forged. Archaeologists searching Thing sites often look for evidence of feasting like large deposits of animal bones to understand the scale of these social gatherings, though it's still debated how much of this was communal sharing versus status-based displays of wealth. From what you can see, it is most definitely a status-based display. Later you witness the sealing of one such deal. The two chieftains stand before their assembled retinues. One presents the other with a magnificent sword, its hilt inlaid with intricate silver wire. The other, in turn, gifts a thick, heavy gold arm ring. These are not mere presents, they are public symbols of a new pact, a physical manifestation of a promise. The value of the gift signifies the strength of the bond. It's like a contract signed not with ink but with gold and steel. You also see a powerful landowner formally introducing his shy, red-cheeked daughter to the strapping, confident son of another chieftain. It's a marriage negotiation, plain and simple, a weaving of families to consolidate power and property. All the great, unseen gears that turn the wheels of your society are on display here. The forging of friendships, the containment of rivalries, the creation of the kin networks that provide security in a dangerous world. As evening falls, the festivities reach a crescendo. A bonfire is lit in the center of the plain, and a skald, not the one who insulted you, but a different one, is telling a heroic saga, his voice rising and falling with the tale of dragons and sea kings. The sound of his chant mixes with the songs of drunkards and the shouts from a wrestling match. For a moment, you allow yourself to just enjoy it, to feel a part of this loud, vibrant, and chaotic community. You have navigated its treacherous legal waters and emerged, if not unscathed, then at least whole, and with your honor intact. The thing has served its purpose, but soon, this temporary city will dissolve, and you will all return to your quiet farmsteads. And when you do, the final private act of this legal drama will still be waiting for you. The festive mood of the thing evaporates as quickly as the morning mist. One by one, then dozen by dozen, the family groups pack their carts, douse their fires, and begin the long, quiet journeys back to their scattered farmsteads. The sprawling temporary city dissolves back into an empty, trampled field, leaving behind only circles of ash and the ghosts of judgments and alliances. Your own departure is subdued. The victory at the assembly feels like a distant memory now, and with every step you take toward home, the final, daunting challenge looms larger. Thorstein's parting words echo in your mind. The court gives you the right to collect the debt. The task of collecting it is now yours. It's an absurd situation when you think about it. You've followed all the rules. You've endured the public insult, undertaken the dangerous journey, navigated the treacherous waters of the law, and won a clear and righteous victory. In a more civilized world, or perhaps just a more bureaucratic one, this would be the end of it. A man in a uniform would show up at Bjorn's door and confiscate the silver. But that is not your world. Your world has a legal system of immense complexity and sophistication, but it is a system almost entirely devoid of a central enforcement authority. The verdict is not an order, it is a license. It is the law's permission for you to take what you are owed, but it offers no help in the actual taking. As you walk the path home, the reality of this sinks in. You are essentially in the same position as a merchant who has been paid for his goods with a promissory note. The note is legally binding, but it is worthless if the debtor refuses to honor it. You, your brother, and your uncle spend the journey discussing the problem in low, worried tones. What do you do if Bjorn simply laughs in your face? Your options are limited, and all of them are bad. You could, in theory, go to his farm and take property equal to the value of the fine. This is a legally recognized option called fjarnam, a form of distraint or seizure. The verdict gives you the right to do it, but this is an incredibly provocative act. Marching onto his land and seizing his best cow or the silver brooches from his wife's tunic is only a hair's breadth away from a violent raid. It would be a public humiliation for him, and a man so shamed is likely to reach for his axe. You would almost certainly trigger the very blood feud the legal process was designed to avoid. It's a solution that could easily get you or your brother killed. Your other option is to wait, to hope that social pressure will compel Bjorn to pay. In theory, a man who defies a legal judgment from the thing loses standing and becomes a sekker, a convicted man who is not quite an outlaw but is well on his way. Refusing to pay a legitimate debt makes him dishonorable, a man whose word cannot be trusted, and his reputation should suffer for it. Historians refer to this reliance on social consequences as a key feature of early Germanic law, where the fear of being ostracized was a primary motivator for compliance. But you know Bjorn. He is proud and stubborn, and he is surrounded by equally proud and stubborn kinsmen. He may decide that the shame of paying you is greater than the shame of defying the court. He might gamble that his family's strength is great enough to weather the social consequences. When you finally arrive home, the sight of your longhouse is a profound comfort, but it does not solve the problem. You are back in the same landscape as before, living a stone's throw from the man who now owes you 4 ounces of silver and a mountain of resentment. For a week, an uneasy quiet settles over the valley. You see Bjorn and his family working in their fields. They see you. You are close enough to shout to one another, but no words are exchanged. The entire community is watching and waiting, holding its breath to see what will happen next. Will the verdict be honored, or will it become the spark for a new and bloodier conflict? The debt hangs in the air between your two farms, a heavy, invisible weight. It is more than just silver. It is the final unresolved piece of your honor. Until it is paid, the victory at the thing is incomplete. It is a promise without fulfillment, a story without an end. And as the days tick by, you realize with a growing sense of dread that if Bjorn will not give you what you are owed, you will be forced to take the next, and far more perilous step to claim it. The week of tense silence finally breaks. You've sent your Uncle Gunnar over to Bjorn's farmstead as an emissary, a neutral and respected elder, to formally request the payment of the fine. It is the last peaceful measure, a final chance for this to end without more conflict. Gunnar returns an hour later, his face grim. The answer was not just no. It was a string of fresh insults and a threat to send your uncle home without his beard if he asked again. Bjorn has made his choice. He will not pay. He is openly defying the judgment of the Thing, betting that you do not have the stomach for what comes next. Your family gathers once more around the central hearth, but the mood is different from that first council. The option of the law has been tried and, while victorious, has proven insufficient. The talk now turns to the final, terrifying recourse the system provides for a man who cannot get his due. It is a word that is spoken in hushed and serious tones. Holmganga, a duel. It is not a wild, chaotic brawl. Like everything else in your society, the duel is a structured, ritualized, and legally sanctioned event. It is the last resort, the final clause in the unwritten contract of justice. When words have failed and judgments are ignored, the matter can be settled with blades on a small island, a holm, or a designated plot of land marked out by stones or hide. It is an appeal to the judgment of the gods through combat. Thorstein, in your discussions, had mentioned it as a theoretical possibility, but now it is a stark and looming reality. Gunnar, who has seen a Holmganga in his youth, describes the grim procedures. It is a contest hedged in by rules. The combatants are allowed a fixed number of shields, usually 3. If a man's shield is broken, he is given another until his allotment is spent. The fighting ground is a specific size, often a cloak 9 feet square, from which a man cannot retreat without being declared a coward, or nidingur, the very insult that started all this. There is a first blood rule. The man who is first wounded, no matter how slightly, can offer to pay a redemption fee to end the duel. If he refuses, or if the initial wronged party refuses to accept, the fight continues, often to the death or until one man is disarmed or yields. You listen to this, and a cold dread washes over you. This is a path from which there is no easy return. While it is legal, it is still a fight with axes and swords. A single slip, a moment of hesitation, could mean your death. And even if you win, you might kill Bjorn, which, while legally permissible within the context of the duel, could still ignite the blood feud you have so carefully tried to avoid. His kinsmen might not accept the duel's verdict, and could seek their own vengeance later. Eric, predictably, is all for it. His eyes gleam at the prospect of a final physical resolution. "It's the only way," he growls, tapping the side of his axe. He shamed you with words, and he shames you again by defying the law. He needs to be answered with steel. But you hesitate. You are a farmer, not a famed warrior. You know how to use an axe to fell a tree, and you can handle a shield, but Bjorn and his cousins are men who have been on raids. They have tested their mettle in real combat. You would be at a disadvantage. Historians see the Holmganga not just as a means of dispute resolution, but also as a form of social Darwinism, a way for aggressive men to legally eliminate rivals and seize property, a practice that was eventually outlawed in Iceland for being too disruptive. You can see how easily it could be abused. The choice is agonizing. To do nothing is to accept defeat. It is to let Bjorn win the final victory, proving that the law is meaningless in the face of brute refusal. Your victory at the Thing would be rendered hollow, a joke. You would be forever known as the man who won his case but was too cowardly to enforce it. The insult Bjorn threw at you would, in the end, become true. But to challenge him to a Holmganga is to risk everything. Your life, your family's future, the fragile peace of the valley. It is a desperate, terrible gamble. You look at your wife, Runa. Her face is pale, but her eyes are steady. She has been listening silently to the discussion. She looks at you, then at Eric, and she sees the terrible path you are all being forced down. She doesn't speak for or against it. Her expression simply says that she understands the choice, and that she will stand by the decision of the household. The ultimate responsibility rests on your shoulders. The law has taken you as far as it can. The rest is up to you, and the answer will not be found in words, but in blood. The decision hangs over your longhouse for a full day, a suffocating pall of dread. The challenge to a Holmganga is a message that must be delivered formally, just like the initial summons. Once you speak the words, the gears of a much bloodier machine will begin to turn. You spend the day in a grim state of preparation, oiling your shield and sharpening your best axe, not with the cheerful energy of your brother, but with the solemn, methodical focus of a man preparing for his own funeral. Every moment is heavy with the choice you are about to make. Just as you are steeling your resolve to finally issue the challenge, a small delegation of men appears on the path to your farm. It is not Bjorn or his kin. It is Ulfar, the white-bearded chieftain who presided over your case at the Thing, accompanied by 2 other respected gray-haired landowners from the region. They are the elders, the unofficial arbiters and peacekeepers of the community. They have heard of Bjorn's refusal to pay and your family's subsequent talk of a duel, and they have come to intervene. They do not come to your house to pass judgment, but to negotiate. They sit by your fire, and you offer them the last of your ale. Ulfar speaks first, his tone that of a weary but resolute father. "The law has spoken," he says, his eyes meeting yours. "And a duel is your right, but it is a right that will cost this valley dearly. If you kill Bjorn, his cousins will seek vengeance on Eric. If he kills you, your son will be bound to seek vengeance on his. The Thing is meant to end feuds, not plant the seeds for new ones." He is appealing not to the law, but to the good of the community, to the fragile peace that allows you all to survive in this harsh land. They do not ask you to forgive the debt. They are not here to undermine the court's decision. They are here to enforce it through the one power they collectively wield: social pressure. They have just come from Bjorn's house, where they delivered a stern and unified message. They told him that if he continues to defy the verdict and forces a duel, he and his family will be ostracized. No one will trade with them. No one will aid them in a harsh winter, and their name will be mud in every household from the mountains to the sea. They have made it clear that his reputation will not survive his stubbornness. Historians often emphasize that this form of communal pressure, or shaming, was one of the most powerful, albeit unofficial tools for enforcing legal norms in a society without a formal police force. You listen as Ulfar lays out the compromise they have brokered. Bjorn, furious and cornered, has finally agreed to pay. He will not bring the silver to you, as that would be too great a loss of face. Instead, he will give the 4 ounces of silver to Ulfar, who will then deliver it to you. It is a small, face-saving measure for him, but it is one you are willing to accept. The price is the same. The victory is the same. An hour later, Ulfar returns and places a small, heavy leather pouch in your hand. You open it and pour the contents onto the table. 4 ounces of silver glinting in the firelight. Some of it is in the form of coins from foreign lands, likely from a raid. The rest is hack silver, bits of chopped up arm rings and brooches, valued by their weight alone. It is the price of your honor, a tangible, cold, and strangely anticlimactic prize. You have won. The feud is over, at least for now. There will be no duel. No more blood will be shed over this matter. A wave of profound, bone-weary relief washes over you. But as you look at the silver, you feel no joy, no sense of triumph. The process has cost you too much in fear and anxiety. And you know that across the field, Bjorn is not feeling remorse or a sense of justice served. He is feeling the sting of humiliation, the bitterness of a defeat forced upon him by his peers. You have taken his silver, and he will not forget it. You have not earned a friend or taught a bully a lesson. You have simply concluded a transaction. You have restored your own honor, but in doing so you have created a permanent well of resentment in your nearest neighbor. The peace you have won is fragile, a thin sheet of ice over the deep, cold water of a lingering feud. It will hold, for now. But you know that you will have to tread carefully for the rest of your days, ever watchful for the next crack, the next insult, the next stray sheep that could send you all plunging back into the icy depths of conflict. In the weeks that follow, a semblance of normalcy returns to your farm. The silver is a welcome addition to your family's small hoard, a tangible buffer against a harsh winter or a poor harvest. The peace with Bjorn is a cold and distant one, a careful avoidance of eye contact and a meticulous respect for fence lines. But it is peace nonetheless. The rhythms of the seasons reassert their dominance. You sow, you reap, you mend, and the high drama of the Thing begins to feel like a strange, vivid dream. One day, a traveler on his way to the coast stops at your farmstead seeking shelter for the night. He is a clerk in the service of a great chieftain, a man who has traveled to lands you've only heard of in gunner's tales. As you share a meal of bread and stew around the fire, he pulls a small, flat object from his traveling pack. It is a piece of calfskin, scraped thin and smooth, and it is covered in a series of tiny, intricate black marks. He tells you it is a copy of a trade agreement his master has made. He is a man who can read and write. You stare at the object in wonder. You have seen runes before, of course, carved into stones to commemorate the dead, or into pieces of wood for charms. But this is different. This is not a short, mystical message. This is a dense web of information, a captured conversation held still and silent on a piece of dried skin. The clerk explains that this is a new custom, one coming from the southern lands and increasingly practiced by kings and powerful churchmen. Instead of relying on the memory of witnesses and the sanctity of a sworn oath, men are now making their mark on these skins, binding themselves to words that will not change, that will not forget, and that cannot be argued with. Later that night, long after the traveler is asleep, you sit by the dying embers of the fire, the memory of that marked skin nagging at your thoughts. You try to imagine your own legal case in this new world. What if your summons to Bjorn had been a piece of skin with marks on it? What if the law speaker, instead of holding the entire code in his magnificent memory, simply read from a great stack of these skins? What if the testimony of your witnesses was not as important as what was written down? The idea is both fascinating and deeply unsettling. On the one hand, you can see the power of it. A written contract would have made Bjorn's debt undeniable, perhaps avoiding the near duel altogether. A written law could not be subtly altered by a law speaker IDS interpretation or forgotten over the generations. It would be solid, permanent, and impartial. It would be, as your Uncle Gunnar said of the law, a stone. But this stone would be one that anyone, if they had the skill, could read for themselves. But as you ponder it, you also feel a sense of profound loss. Historians and academics often refer to the transition from oral to literate culture as one of the most significant shifts in human history, fundamentally changing how societies store knowledge, understand truth, and structure power. You are living on the cusp of that change, and it feels like a trade-off. Your entire experience at the thing was built on human factors: reputation, the perceived honesty of a witness's face, the sway of a powerful speech, the hypnotic cadence of a poem, the shared memory of a community. You won your case not because of a technicality, but because the judges, influenced by Thorstein's quiet logic and your own steady reputation, believed you. In a world of written laws, would there still be a need for a man like Thorstein, whose skill is in reading people and swaying them with reason? Would there be a place for a man like Gunnar, whose mind is a library of unwritten precedents and histories? And what of the law speaker? The most respected man at the assembly would be reduced from a living vessel of the entire legal tradition to a simple reader. The sacred theatrical performance at the Law Rock would become a dry recitation. Something vital, something human, would be lost. The law would move from the memories and hearts of the people and become imprisoned in these strange black marks on skins, accessible only to the few who possessed the mysterious craft of reading. You think of your oath on the holy ring, the terrifying absolute belief that the gods were listening. If the oath were simply your mark at the bottom of a page, would it carry the same weight? Would the gods pay attention to a scribble? The new way seems powerful, yes, but it also seems colder, more distant, a world where the law is a thing separate from the people it governs. You find yourself feeling a strange protectiveness over your own chaotic, personal, and deeply human system. It is a flawed and dangerous system, but it is yours. You fall asleep wondering if your grandchildren's world will have a place for holy rings and law speakers, or if all their disputes will be settled by the silent, unblinking testimony of calfskin. Years pass. The memory of the trial, once a sharp and painful thorn, softens into a well-worn story you tell your own children, a lesson in honor, courage, and the strange workings of the law. Your life is etched by the seasons, by births and deaths, by good harvests and bad. The fragile peace with Bjorn's family holds, evolving over time into a kind of gruff, unspoken respect. You have both grown older, and the fires of your old animosity have banked to embers. You have learned to be neighbors. One evening, as you sit outside your longhouse watching your eldest son, now a young man, teaching his own child how to fletch an arrow, you find your mind drifting back to the Thingstead. You think of the chaotic swirl of people, the solemnity of the lawspeaker, the shouting of the advocates, the tense silence of the deliberation. It all seemed so ad hoc, so driven by personality, passion, and the threat of violence. It was a messy human business from start to finish. And yet, as you reflect on it from the vantage point of age, you begin to see something else within that chaos. You see a shape, a pattern, that is surprisingly familiar. You remember standing on the hillside, a simple farmer, one man among hundreds, watching the proceedings. You were not a subject ruled by the whims of a distant king who could take your property or your life without reason. You were a participant. You had the right to bring a grievance, the right to be heard, and the right to a judgment rendered by your peers, the powerful landowners of your own region. You think of the Logreta, the panel of chieftains on their bench. They were not perfect, and their judgments were surely influenced by their own politics and prejudices, as Thorstein had pointed out. Historians and political scientists trace the roots of modern representative democracy to many sources, but the early Germanic assemblies are consistently cited as a crucial precursor to the idea of a parliament. In that bench of powerful men, you now see the faint outline of something new, the seed of an idea that will take 1,000 years to fully blossom. It was a council, a body of representatives, unelected and hereditary to be sure, who were nonetheless bound by the law and accountable, in their own way, to the people they led. A chieftain who consistently made poor or unpopular judgments at the thing would find his support eroding, his followers drifting away to a more respected leader. You remember the lawspeaker, the man who held the entire law in his head, reciting it for all to hear. In that act you see the principle of transparency, the radical idea that the law belongs to everyone, not just to a privileged few who can read. It was a public trust, a shared knowledge that formed the bedrock of the entire community. And in the very existence of the assembly and the annual pilgrimage of people from every corner of the land to a single place, to settle disputes and make decisions, you see the birth of a nation. Not a nation of blood and soil defined by a king, but a commonwealth defined by a shared commitment to a common law. It was a rough, imperfect system. It was frequently unfair. It relied on a frightening degree of self-enforcement, and it could easily break down into the very violence it was designed to prevent. Your own story could have ended very differently with a single swing of an axe during a duel. But the ideal at its core was revolutionary. The idea that even the strongest chieftain was subject to the law, that a common farmer had a right to seek justice, and that disputes should be settled not just by might, but by a public appeal to a shared set of rules. You look at your son and your grandson, their heads bent together over their work in the fading light. The world they will inherit will be different from yours. The strange marked skins the traveler showed you will become more common. Chieftains will grow more powerful, perhaps even calling themselves kings. The old ways will shift and change. But you realize that the legacy of the thing, the echo of that noisy, chaotic, and profoundly human assembly, will endure. It will survive in the belief that a community can govern itself, that a people can be bound together by law instead of by a lash, and that even the smallest voice has a right to be heard in the great ongoing argument of justice. It is a legacy carved not on stone, but in the very heart of what it means to be a free people. It is time for the journey home. But it is not the same journey you took to the Thingstead weeks ago, a trip fraught with anxiety and the burning sting of a fresh insult. The return is quieter, more contemplative. You are walking the same paths, fording the same rivers and sleeping under the same stars, but you are not the same man. The world feels both larger and more comprehensible than it did before. The abstract concepts of law, honor, and community, which had once been a distant backdrop to your life of farming and family, have become intensely real and personal. You have seen the gears of your society up close, witnessed their turning and felt their weight. The procession of travelers is smaller now, more spread out. The great unified river of humanity that flowed toward the Thing now frays into 100 different streams, each wending its way back to a different valley, a different fjord. You exchange quiet, knowing nods with men you saw in the court ring, men whose own dramas played out in parallel to yours. You saw one of them lose his case over a land dispute. His face is a mask of weary resignation. You see another who won a great inheritance for his family. He rides a fine new horse, his shoulders squared with pride. Each of you is returning home with a story, a verdict that has subtly but irrevocably altered the course of your life. Your own small party is subdued. The victory is a settled fact, the silver a comforting weight in your travel pack. There is less to talk about now. Eric walks with a calmer stride, his need for a violent resolution having been satisfied, however unexpectedly, by the orderly process of the law. Gunnar is mostly silent, occasionally pointing out a landmark or commenting on the weather, his duties as a mentor and guide now complete. You find yourself walking for long stretches in a comfortable silence, processing the sheer density of the experience. You think of the spectrum of justice you witnessed. At one end was your own case, a matter of wounded pride settled with a carefully calculated sum of money, a testament to the law's ability to find balance and restore order. At the other end was the outlaw, a man erased from society by a series of ritualistic words, a chilling display of the law's absolute, final power. You realize that you all live your lives on the vast ground between those two extremes, constantly negotiating, compromising, and occasionally fighting to maintain your place within the protective circle of the law. To be inside that circle is to have a name, a value, a voice. To be cast out is to be nothing more than a beast, a wolf in the sacred places. As you get closer to home, the landscape becomes familiar again. You see the line of hills that marks the boundary of your own lands, the familiar stand of birch trees by the river. A sense of profound belonging washes over you. You did not just fight for yourself at the Thing. You fought for your right to exist peacefully in this small patch of the world, to be respected by your neighbors, and to pass this farm and your good name on to your children. You have affirmed your place in the community not with an axe, but with an appeal to the shared customs that bind you all together. You have learned that the law is not just a weapon to be used in anger, but the very thread from which the fabric of your society is woven. It is a rough, homespun fabric, to be sure, prone to fraying and tearing, but it is the only thing that keeps the cold winds of chaos at bay. When your longhouse finally comes into view, its familiar plume of smoke rising into the evening sky, it looks different. It is no longer just a building of wood and turf, but the center of your world, the home field you defended, the place where your honor resides. You see Runa and the children running from the doorway to greet you, their faces alight with relief and joy. You have returned, not just from a journey, but from a profound education. You are a farmer still, and tomorrow you will worry about the weather and the fences just as you always have. But you carry a new understanding with you now, a quiet confidence forged in the fire of a public trial. Your honor was challenged, and you answered. And so your journey, like the long northern twilight, finally softens into a close. The echoes of the law speaker's voice have faded, the tension of the court ring has dissolved, and the cold, hard weight of the silver in your pouch has become a simple fact of a life restored. You can feel the warmth of the longhouse fire on your face now, a real and comforting presence that chases away the lingering chill of the ordeal. The sounds of your children's laughter replace the murmurs of the judging crowd, grounding you in the simple, profound reality of the home you fought so hard to protect. The great, complicated machinery of the world outside, with its chieftains and laws and fragile, ever-shifting alliances, can be left for another day. For tonight, there is only the familiar scent of wood smoke and roasting bread, the comforting weight of a child leaning against your knee, and the deep, quiet satisfaction of a difficult path walked to its end. There are no more arguments to be made, no more witnesses to be called. There is only this peaceful, ordinary moment, a treasure won not with a sword, but with the courage to believe in a world held together by words. The scales have been balanced, and all is, for now, at peace.